Hello, this is Jim for the Monopoly Project. We're doing one of our floating book reviews for the month of March, and we're here on the Monopoly Project yacht. Every successful real estate investor has a yacht, and this Monopoly Project yacht, unfortunately, it's the Bikini Girls' day off, so you just have me, and we're here to review 4 books on Val Vista Lakes on a nice day in April, a little windy, but we're doing good. So we got 4 books. Let's jump right into them. The Fourfold Kingdom of God, Robert Heinlein's Friday, science fiction, Alaric Bond's Honor Bound. This is like the 12th book in the series we've read. And finally, Bad Moon Rising, the unofficial history of Creedence Clearwater. So let's jump right into them. Let me adjust our course, and then we'll be right back with our first book. Okay, so for our third book in the Monopoly Project Floating Book Review on the yacht here, the Monopoly Project yacht, is Honor Bound by Alaric Bond. This is either the 11th or 12th book in the series that I've been very, very positive about. You know, I've read all the other British naval stories, you know, from the Napoleonic era, and it's been over 20 years that I've read the various different series. I've read like 5 or 6 or 7 of them, and most of them are anywhere from 10 to 20 books, and so it's a lot of time. But I really like this one because, for the reasons I stated, Alaric Bond doesn't just follow one captain. Normally in all of them, the captain's the key guy, and everybody likes the captain, whether he's nobility or whether he rises from nowhere, and it just tells a story. But this one, he follows a number of characters, and you really can't tell who's going to live and who's going to die. And this one's really good, and this one's particularly good. I particularly like this one because most of the story takes place on land. The one-armed lieutenant, who is sort of the central character that's being carried through all of the stories, gets captured. He and his crew get captured, and they captured by the French during the Napoleonic Wars, and they're brought to a prison camp. And I guess it's a true story, and he goes into a lot of detail, and it is very interesting. The French ran a lot of prisoner of war camps, like, you know, anybody in a war. And some of them were the normal hellhole you would think of a prisoner of war camp. But there was one at Verdun, which was later, I think, a famous battle in World War I. But at Verdun, there was a prisoner of war camp in which they had officers. And basically, it was an open town. You could just wander around, and merchants set up shops, and there was all sorts of stuff. And some of the imprisoned people even brought their family, their wives, and even mistresses over from England, and they lived there. And at that time, of course, there was this tradition of honorable discharge, or honorable trading, is that if you got captured by the enemy, they would wait until one of their guys got captured, and then you would exchange the 2 guys, and then you were free to fight. Or you could give your word that you wouldn't fight. You would go back to your country, but you wouldn't fight, because honor was considered much more important than nationality, you know, and all, you know, and so these people are sort of trapped there by their own, quote, honor. And I think that's sort of a play on the title, Honor Bound. They're bound by honor to not fight. And they're also, the other thing that Napoleon did in the Napoleonic War is he actually captured and imprisoned English civilians who were in France at the time of the war started. And in this book, one of them is a clergyman, another is a senior ship captain, and those are actually true historical figures that you can read about. Anyway, so it turns out that the lieutenant, one-armed lieutenant, and his crew are brought back to Verdun and put in there, and he ends up with, as a very interesting side story, is he ends up, one of the crew, 2 of the crew go with him, you know, the actual just normal seamen, who the French, of course, didn't consider gentlemen, so they were not even worth, you know, talking about or anything. They were typically imprisoned in much worse places, but they brought this guy along. It turns out he had the ability to see into the future, and he had seen into the future, and he had told his shipmates what was going to happen, you know, like when they went into harbor sometimes it was super important, like when a battle was coming, who would die and who wouldn't, although he wouldn't necessarily tell them, he just knew. But even down to mundane things like that, when they would go into a harbor and everybody would ask him, well, how long are we going to be here? Are we going to get leave? And he said, no, we're only going to be here a day and then we got to go. Or yeah, he said, we're going to be here a few months. Yeah, we'll get leave. So he had this ability to see into the future, and he didn't like it. And he was a real loner because of it or whatever reason. But his story is very interesting in the book, because they eventually end up joining a traveling circus, very much like what's the book that I had reviewed earlier, Station 11. It was a story about end of the world novel where the world is destroyed by a virus. Just think of that. And it ends up following these people who are in a traveling, not circus, but a traveling troupe. They put on Shakespeare plays and stuff like that. But in any case, that's how he ends up also at Verdun along with the officers. But along the way, he meets the leader of the troupe, who is actually a defrocked priest. And the priest does the priest actually, there's another guy in the troupe who does this, and he does it as a part of the dark arts. Again, divination, which I talked about in the review of the first book, the Fourfold Kingdom of God. But he was demon possessed, and the leader of the troupe actually does an exorcism and expels it, so he loses the ability to foresee the future. He was also, before that, a musician, a very good one. But he also, when he is exorcised, he also loses the ability to play music anymore. And so when he goes back, eventually when he goes back to the ships, he's just one of the member of the crew, and he becomes he loses also his loner status, and he just becomes happy. So anyway, a little aside from the Verdun thing, but it was very interesting to see. And of course they escaped from Verdun, even though it means they're losing their honor, because they had given their word they wouldn't. And that, again, it was based on a true story of an escape. But the escape, of course, ends up with, first of all, he finds the captain that we had lost like 3 or 4 books ago, actually had been captured and put in there. He escapes with him. It turns out they find the lieutenant who everybody is suspect of not being honorable, because he is suspected of killing his romantic rival, and even worse than that, he had given his word on something and he'd gone back on it. So they find him. He turns out to be, since he couldn't get a job anywhere because he was no longer respectable, he turns out to become a smuggler, and he's smuggling goods from Holland to England. And so between them, they team up and they go back, and they're on the ocean, the sea, and they end up in a fight with a French ship. And of course, working together, the lieutenant, the captain who has escaped, his friend who's the surgeon, and this guy managed to defeat the French. And so of course they've got their honor back, and of course to make the moral case all right, the lieutenant who lost his honor gets killed in the battle. So it all works out good. And so I'm looking forward to the next next book. I've already bought it, and so it's sitting on the shelf. He gets sealed orders to go somewhere and do something. So in any case, like I said, I really like this series. So that's Honor Bound. That's the third of our four books, and so we'll go on to our last book here, and we're headed home. We're headed under the bridge. The 2 lakes here are interconnected by a bridge over the road, and then there's a lake to the left and a lake to the right, the east and the west lake, which are not connected to this main lake where the clubhouse is on here in Val Vista Lakes. So anyway, let me go on to the last book, and then we will finish up our book reviews. You see a lot of people out on the shore here setting up for picnics and Easter and this and that. It's actually Friday the 15th. I'm a little late on the book reviews, but it is Good Friday, and so thanks be to God, and we will go on to our next book.